You've been fighting thoughts that aren't even yours. And the scariest part? They sound exactly like you. Shaytan doesn't argue. He imitates. He whispers guilt. He injects fear. He loops your sin in your voice until you believe you're the enemy. But there's one thing, one divine command, that can break that loop instantly. 1. The voice you're battling was designed to sound like you. You keep wondering what's wrong with you, why your mind feels like a battlefield, why you're so exhausted, and you haven't even spoken a word out loud, why your brain turns against you the moment you're alone, and most of all, why no one else seems to notice the war you're fighting inside. But the truth is, you're not broken, you're not weak, and you're not going crazy. You're being invaded, quietly, strategically, and psychologically. You're not losing your mind. You're losing your ownership of it, bit by bit, thought by thought, regret by regret, because the voice you're fighting inside your head, it doesn't sound like an enemy. It doesn't feel like Shaytan. It doesn't scream in a different language. It doesn't come with horns and red eyes and warnings. It comes like a whisper that sounds exactly like you. And that's where the trap begins. Because once the enemy learns to wear your voice, you no longer question it. You no longer fight it. You listen to it. You obey it. You become it. It starts with a small thought, I'm failing. Then another, I'll never change. Then one more, why would Allah even forgive me after this? And you don't even notice that you never meant to say those things. You didn't ask for those thoughts. They just arrived, like a thief slipping through an unlocked window. A window you never realized was open. That voice, it mimics your pain. It borrows your regrets. It uses memories that still sting. It recites your old mistakes, the ones you've cried over in secret, and it strings them together like a song, so that it feels believable, so that it feels like you. And once you believe it's your voice, you stop defending yourself. You stop seeking mercy. You stop hoping for healing, because the whisper no longer feels like a whisper. It feels like your truth, like your identity, like the real you that Allah must be ashamed of. But listen to me, that is not your voice. That is not your soul. That is not how Allah speaks to the ones He loves. That is Shaytan, pretending to be your inner narrator, so he can make you fear your own heart, so he can trap you in a prison that has no visible walls, just constant noise. You weren't meant to feel this much confusion. You weren't created to spiral in regret every night. You weren't designed to hate yourself while begging for Allah's love. You were designed to return, to heal, to grow, to be flawed, but forgiven. So how did we end up here? It's because the most powerful trick Shaytan ever used was making you believe that every dark thought in your mind came from you. He wears your tone. He echoes your insecurities. He imitates your weaknesses. And then he disappears. So when the thought arrives, you take the blame. And that's how he wins, by making you turn against yourself. But you're not the enemy. You're the victim of spiritual infiltration, and the proof that your heart is still alive is that you're still trying to escape. You're still searching for relief. You're still here, reading these words, fighting to take back your mind. That's not weakness. That's strength. That's faith. That's a soul refusing to surrender. And maybe, just maybe, this message tonight isn't random. Maybe Allah is showing you right now that you were never fighting yourself. You were fighting a voice that never belonged in your head to begin with, and He's whispering back into your heart. You're not alone anymore. You're not crazy. You're under attack, but you are still mine, and I still know how to silence the storm. 2. Shaytan doesn't break you, he makes you break yourself. You keep wondering why you keep falling, why you keep messing up, why it feels like, no matter how hard you try to become better, you always end up in the same dark place. But what if I told you, Shaytan isn't trying to destroy you with one big hit? That would be too obvious, too loud. You'd notice it. You'd fight back. Instead, he studies you, quietly, patiently. He waits for your tired days. He waits for your low moments. He watches how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. He listens to the names you call yourself in your head. Then he learns your rhythm and begins to speak in it. But he doesn't attack you from the outside. He makes you attack yourself from the inside. He doesn't push you off the edge. He whispers, maybe you deserve to fall. Maybe you were never strong in the first place. Maybe this is who you really are. He makes you see your own reflection and then twists it. So instead of seeing potential, you see failure. Instead of seeing growth, you see a fake. Instead of seeing a heart that's trying to return to Allah, you see a hypocrite playing dress-up. He makes you afraid of your own hands, doubtful of your own repentance, disgusted by your own efforts to change. He doesn't destroy your faith. He makes you ashamed to have any. He doesn't ruin your dua. He convinces you that your dua doesn't matter. And he does it so slowly, so subtly, you don't even realize you're losing pieces of yourself until you no longer feel worthy of being saved. But listen, Shaytan can't actually break you, because Allah designed you with a heart that heals, a soul that bends but doesn't snap, and a mind that, when connected to Him, can silence any whisper. So what does Shaytan do instead? He tricks you into picking up the weapon and turning it on yourself. He doesn't need to make you sin. He just needs to make you feel like you are the sin. He wants you to carry guilt like a weight, not use it as a reason to return. He wants you to tie your identity to your worst mistake, so that even when you're forgiven by Allah, you're still imprisoned by your own self-hate. That's his goal, to make you hate yourself so deeply that you stop believing in redemption, to make you so disgusted by your past that you reject the future Allah still wants to write for you. But Shaytan's greatest fear isn't your sin. It's your comeback. It's the moment you wake up and say, that wasn't me. That was a whisper. That was sabotage. And I still belong to Allah. Because the moment you realize that you're still worthy, even after the storm, His plan collapses. So, if you've been tearing yourself down, if you've been cruel to your own mind, if you've been punishing yourself for something you already cried about in secret, pause and recognize the pattern. You're not the villain. You're not the failure. You're not beyond hope. You were just targeted. And now, Allah is helping you see it. He didn't let this reach you by accident. He knows how many nights you've spent trapped in mental torture for things He already forgave. It's time to put the weapon down, because what you're fighting was never you. 3. The attacks happen most when you're trying to heal. You ever notice how the thoughts get darker right after you try to get better? You make wudu. You say enough to the sin. You decide you're going to change. You start to pray on time again. You finally feel like maybe, just maybe, you're on your way back. But then out of nowhere, you're hit harder than ever before. Your urges come back stronger. Your shame starts screaming louder. And you start wondering, why do I feel worse now that I'm trying to be better? That's not weakness. That's not a you're broken. That's not Allah turning away from you. That's proof that Shaytan knows you're slipping out of his hands. It's when you're closest to escaping that the prison guard starts rattling the chains. The darkness doesn't get louder when you sin. It gets louder when you start healing from it. Because that's the threat. That's what scares him. When you numb yourself with the sin, Shaytan leaves you quiet. Because you're easy to manage. But the moment you try to wake up, the moment your soul starts moving, that's when he panics. That's when he sends whispers you haven't heard in months. That's when he makes your chest feel tight for no reason. That's when he floods your mind with regret and plays your past like a horror film on repeat. Because he wants to catch you right at the start. He wants to break you before you rebuild. He wants to make healing feel heavier than falling. You think, if Allah is pleased with my return, why do I feel so attacked? But Allah is pleased. That's why you're being tested. Not to push you away, but to pull you through. Because every time you fight to pray, despite the noise in your head, you purify your heart. Every time you say no to the sin, even when your soul is shaking, you rewrite your future. Every time you fall, but crawl back anyway, you destroy the lie that said you'd never change. And that's what scares Shaytan most. Not who you are today, but who you're becoming. You were quiet for too long, lost for too long, disconnected for too long. But now that you're trying to reconnect with Allah, the enemy knows he's losing grip. So he presses harder. He plants more doubt. He stirs more pain. But listen, just because the wound feels fresh doesn't mean it's infected. Sometimes pain is part of healing. Sometimes the noise gets louder because you're getting closer to silence. And silence is where Shaytan can't survive. Silence is where Allah's whisper lives. Silence is where your soul finds its voice again. So if the thoughts have been chasing you lately, if the temptation has gotten stronger, if the weight has grown heavier, don't give up. You're not being abandoned. You're being upgraded. Shaytan doesn't fight those he already controls. He fights the ones who are walking away. And if you've been attacked harder lately, it's because you're no longer sitting still in the darkness. You're moving toward the light. And that's exactly where Allah wants you. For the guilt isn't always A of sin. Sometimes it's A of interference. Guilt can feel holy. It can feel like that your heart still works, that you still care, that you're not numb to your wrongs. But not all guilt is guidance. Some of it is a trap, because when Shaytan whispers, he doesn't just tempt you into the sin. He sticks around after, to flood your chest with guilt so loud, it drowns out the door back to Allah. And that's how it starts. You fall. You feel regret. You cry. You ask Allah to forgive you. But then instead of feeling relief, you feel something else creeping in. A voice that says, you think that was enough? You really think he'll forgive you? You're not sincere. You just got scared. You're disgusting. Don't even raise your hands in dua tonight. And you listen, because the voice doesn't feel like Shaytan anymore. It feels like your conscience, like your own soul is disgusted with you. But here's the truth. Your conscience reminds you of the path back. Shaytan drowns you in guilt, so you never believe you're allowed to return. He weaponizes your sincerity. He takes your soft heart and twists it until it hates itself. That's not repentance. That's spiritual manipulation. And it's subtle, because guilt is supposed to bring you closer to Allah, not leave you paralyzed in your bed, too ashamed to speak His name. But Shaytan flips that emotion. He stretches it beyond its purpose, until it's no longer a light that guides you, it's a weight that buries you. That's not from Allah. That's interference. That's a hijacked signal. And the most heartbreaking part, you think you're being humble. You think you're being honest with yourself. You think you're showing Allah how sorry you are by torturing yourself with self-hate. But Allah never asked for that. He asked for you to feel regret, not for you to believe you're unworthy of His mercy. He asked for tears, not for spiritual self-harm. And when you punish yourself for days, telling yourself you deserve the sadness, that you deserve to feel far, that you don't deserve to even open the Quran right now, just pause and ask, who would want me to believe that? Who benefits from me feeling disconnected from Allah, even after I've cried to Him? The answer is simple. It's not your Lord. It's not your fitra. It's not your soul. It's the one who lost hope in Allah and now wants you to do the same. So if the guilt keeps circling, long after you've already said Astaghfirullah, if your heart feels heavier after your apology instead of lighter, then know this. That's not divine justice. That's an attack. Because Allah said, say, O my servants who have wronged their own souls, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Quran 39:53. If Allah says, don't despair, but the guilt in your chest is making you give up, then something else is speaking. Something else is distorting your perception of Allah. And it's not holiness. It's harassment. You are allowed to feel bad. You are meant to feel bad, but you were never meant to stay there. Because guilt is supposed to lead to forgiveness, not mental prison. So the next time that guilt starts looping in your brain, ask yourself, does this guilt make me want to crawl back to Allah? Or does it make me feel like I'm no longer welcome? If it's the second one, it's not your soul speaking. It's a whisper. It's interference. And you need to unplug it before it convinces you to give up on the one who never gave up on you. 5. You're not addicted to the thought. You're hooked to the voice feeding it. You think you're addicted to the thought, to the urge, to the sin, to the version of yourself you're tired of carrying. You keep falling, then crying, then falling again. And you start telling yourself the story Shaytan wants you to believe. I must be broken. This must be who I am. There's no way I'm ever getting out of this. But what if I told you, you're not addicted to the sin. You're addicted to the voice that keeps feeding it. There's a difference. The sin might feel like it's coming from you, but that's only because it's been whispered to you so many times in your own voice that you've stopped questioning where it came from. Shaytan doesn't offer new sins. He just loops the ones he knows worked last time. He recycles the same urge. He times it perfectly. He waits until you're alone, tired, unmotivated, spiritually empty. And then he doesn't force you to act. He just feeds the urge, slowly, softly, like a voice in the background that you forget to mute. He keeps reminding you of how it felt. He doesn't care about the damage. He just plays back the dopamine, the rush, the comfort, the moment of silence that sin created in your storm. And you forget what came after. The shame, the guilt, the sinking. You think you chose it, but you were conditioned. He fed the same thought until it became familiar. And what's familiar starts to feel safe, even when it's destroying you. That's not addiction. That's spiritual manipulation. And here's the scariest part. It's not just the sin he makes easy. It's the recovery he makes impossible. He'll whisper the desire. Then, when you fall, he'll whisper, you see, you're still the same. You can wear the thobe, grow the beard, read the Quran, but this is who you really are. He becomes the supplier and the accuser. The same voice that tempted you is now the one telling you that Allah doesn't love you anymore. But it's a trick, and it works because you think the voice is you. That's why you feel helpless. That's why you feel enslaved to the thought. Not because it's stronger than you, but because it's disguised as you. And so, every time you resist it, he whispers again, "You'll come back. You always do." And you start to believe it. But listen to me carefully. The sin may have comforted your body, but it buried your soul. And the fact that you still feel pain, still feel conflict, still feel shame, is proof that your heart is still alive. You're not gone. You're not hopeless. You're not this voice. You're just tired. Tired of fighting what was never yours to carry. Tired of feeling owned by an urge that doesn't belong to your soul. And tonight, maybe for the first time in a long time, you're realizing it wasn't the sin that was hard to leave. It was the voice that kept bringing it back. That's what needs to be silenced. That's what needs to be confronted. Not with anger, not with panic, but with one soft, defiant sentence. Audu billahi min Shaytan rajim. Because sometimes the strongest battle isn't between you and the sin, but between you and the whisper keeping it alive. And the moment you starve the voice, the thought will lose its power. You're not addicted. You're still healing. And Allah has never stopped watching the fight you've been trying to win alone. You just didn't know. The war started in your mind. 6. Shaytan's greatest weapon is mental fatigue. It's not always the sin that breaks you. It's the tiredness that comes after. That kind of tiredness where even opening your eyes feels like a test. Where you look at the Quran but feel too numb to touch it. Where you want to pray, but your body doesn't move, and your heart just stares back at you, silent. You wonder, why do I feel like I've been running, even though I haven't gone anywhere? Why do I feel like my soul is heavy, even though nothing bad happened today? This is not just laziness. It's not just sadness. It's spiritual warfare. Because Shaytan's greatest weapon is not rage. It's not fire. It's not desire. It's fatigue. Not the kind that makes you collapse, but the kind that makes you stop trying. He doesn't want to destroy your iman in one night. He just wants to drain it over time. One ignored prayer. One postponed dua. One whispered, "Maybe I'll repent tomorrow." He doesn't make you sin boldly at first. He just makes you spiritually tired until your resistance wears off. Until one day you wake up and feel nothing. Not guilt, not excitement, not even hope, just blank. That's the goal, to keep you alive, but spiritually unconscious. To keep you scrolling, but never reflecting. To keep you breathing, but never remembering Allah. Because when your soul is exhausted, you stop showing up to the fight. And when you stop showing up, he doesn't even need to whisper anymore. He just watches you repeat the same patterns. On autopilot, numb, broken, and slowly, obediently, detached from the one thing that could have saved you. Your connection to the one who created your soul in the first place. But here's the truth Shaytan doesn't want you to know. Even when your body is tired, even when your heart feels dead, even when your mind wants to shut down, your soul still remembers Allah, even in silence, even in failure, even in sleep, because Allah placed His name inside you before you were even born. And no amount of fatigue can erase that. You might be exhausted right now. You might feel like you've been fighting alone. You might not even have the energy to raise your hands. But even the whisper, "Ya Allah, I'm tired," is a victory in the unseen, because tired warriors are still warriors, and fatigue in the path of Allah is more beloved than ease in the hands of Shaytan. Shaytan wants you to collapse, but Allah wants you to pause and remember That even when you're not praying loudly, even when you're not feeling spiritual, even when your body won't move, your soul is still calling out. So don't mistake your tiredness for failure. It's not of weakness. It's that you've been fighting longer than anyone knows. And Allah sees that. He sees the night you stayed awake overthinking. He sees the day you tried to recite but your mind wandered. He sees the moment you whispered, Astaghfirullah, with your head down, feeling ashamed it wasn't more sincere. He saw it all, and He didn't judge you. He counted it. So if you're tired, rest in His mercy, not in your own self-blame. Because Shaytan wins when you stop moving, but Allah wins when you call out. Even if your voice cracks, even if your hands shake, even if your heart doesn't feel it yet, you're not defeated. You're just worn, and worn hearts are the softest ones for Allah to hold. 7. The key isn't silence. It's saying the right words. You've been taught to stay quiet, to deal with your thoughts in silence, to keep your battles buried in your chest, because no one would understand anyway. So you let the thoughts circle. You let the whispers play on loop. You try to fight it all in your mind, thinking that if you're just strong enough, it'll eventually pass. But it doesn't. The thoughts don't get quieter. The temptations don't get weaker. The shame doesn't shrink. And now, even your silence feels heavy. Even your quiet feels like it's screaming. Because Shaytan lives in silence. He feeds off it. He moves through it. He uses it as a tunnel to crawl deeper into your thoughts, until you don't even know which voice is his and which one is yours. You keep it all inside, thinking you're being strong. But that silence is exactly where he hides, because he knows you'll hesitate to speak out loud. He knows you're afraid of sounding crazy. He knows you'd rather overthink than expose the thought. So he gets braver. He sends darker whispers. He floods your mind with doubts. He plays the same guilt again and again, until it doesn't even sting anymore. It just becomes normal. But here's what no one told you. The mind doesn't defeat Shaytan. The tongue does. Because your thoughts may feel like a battlefield, but your voice is a sword, a spiritual one. And the moment you use it, the moment you speak the name of Allah, Shaytan's grip breaks. It's not your silence that protects you. It's the words you say through it. When you whisper, A'udu billahi min Shaytan, rajim. You're not just saying something symbolic. You're calling in divine help. You're declaring war. You're shining a light directly into the shadow that's been speaking to you. Because Shaytan can't stay where the name of Allah is mentioned. He can whisper into your silence, but he flees from your remembrance. And that's what he fears. Not how strong your mind is, but how active your tongue is in dhikr. You don't have to shout. You don't need to recite an entire surah. You just need to interrupt the pattern. Break the loop. Speak out what you've been afraid to say. Even if all you say is, Ya Allah, this isn't me. Please remove what doesn't belong in my mind. That sentence alone can shatter what 1,000 whispers tried to build, because you were never supposed to suffer in silence. You were never expected to fight this alone. Your thoughts aren't your prison. Your voice is your key. But Shaytan's strategy is to keep you embarrassed. He wants you to think that saying it out loud is weakness, that asking Allah for help when the thought comes is proof you've failed. But it's not. It's proof that you're still awake, still trying, still connected to the rope that's been pulling you back, even when you couldn't feel it. The tongue is light, and light always exposes shadows. So, tonight, speak, even if your voice is shaky, even if the thought feels too heavy to explain. Even if you're not sure what to say anything. Say the name of the one who made you. Say the name of the one who hears thoughts before you even form them. Say, Audu billahi min Shaytan irrajim. Say, Ya Allah, protect my mind. Say, this thought is not from me and it has no power over me, because the key was never in staying quiet. The key was saying the right words at the right time. And those words are the ones that call Allah into the war. You thought you had to fight alone. 8. You don't need louder faith. You need a quieter mind. You keep telling yourself, I just need stronger faith. I need to believe harder. I need to worship more, cry more, feel more. And while those things are beautiful, they're not always the cure. Because your problem isn't a lack of belief. It's the noise drowning out the belief that's already there. You don't need louder faith. You need a quieter mind. Because deep inside you, you already believe in Allah. You already know He is merciful. You already know He listens. You already know He forgives. But it's hard to feel it when your thoughts won't stop screaming over it. The whispers, the shame, the flashbacks, the fears, the questions, the guilt that loops in your head like a broken recording, repeating the same sentence until your heart starts to forget what peace sounds like. Shaytan doesn't destroy your iman by attacking your faith directly. He just makes your mind too loud for your soul to hear what it already knows. He doesn't shout doubt. He clutters the space. He throws 10 thoughts at once. He pokes at your past, flashes your mistakes, replays the sin, then adds, what kind of believer are you? And in that storm, your heart is still trying to whisper, Allah, help me. But the voice is so soft, you can't hear it. So you think it's not there. You think your faith is dying. You think you're drifting, but it's not. It's buried, not lost. Because faith doesn't need to shout. It only needs space. And sometimes the holiest thing you can do isn't yell back at your doubts. It's quiet, everything else long enough to hear your soul again. Silence isn't laziness. It's sacred. It's where Allah meets you when the words don't come. It's where the tears speak louder than the tongue. It's where the healing begins. Not with a lecture, but with stillness. Shaytan wants your mind busy, running, overloaded, panicking, because he knows if you ever reach inner stillness, even for a moment, you'll remember that Allah never left, that He's always been within arm's reach, that the noise was never a reflection of your faith, it was an invasion of it. You keep asking for bigger faith, but maybe what you really need is to clear the table of mental clutter and give your current faith room to breathe. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to force emotion. You don't need to pretend to feel close when you feel far. You just need to return to the one who already knows what you're thinking, even before you form the sentence. Let your mind quiet. Let your body pause. Let your thoughts slow down. And in that silence, listen, not for lightning, not for a voice in the clouds, just for the whisper your soul's been repeating through every storm. I still belong to Allah. That whisper is enough. And if you protect it, Allah will grow it into something stronger than anything Shaytan ever planted. Not by shouting back, but by silencing what was never yours to carry. You've been living with a voice in your head that was never yours. Whispers that disguise themselves as thoughts. Doubts that wore your tone. Sins that felt like habits, but were actually hooks, planted and fed. And yet, you never gave up. You kept searching, kept crying, kept asking Allah, why is my mind so loud, when my soul just wants peace? And maybe tonight was your answer, because you're not weak. You're not crazy. You're not addicted. You're not faithless. You were under attack, but Allah has been silently protecting you this entire time. He let you hear this, so you could finally see the truth. That voice was never you. That loop was never permanent. And that battle was never yours alone to fight. So tonight, take the first step back. Say his name, out loud, even if your voice shakes, even if your heart isn't fully sure. Because even a whisper of A'udhu billahi minash shaitan irrajim can shatter what Shaytan spent years building. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be loud. You just have to be willing. Allah doesn't just hear your silence. He understands it. And when your thoughts become too loud to carry, He will always give you the rope to climb out. Tonight, He just did.